if you give yes. Hello, everybody. So, Schaffhauser Jazzgespräche, it's the 20th time we do that. And I remember Pius Knüssel, when we started this row, he said, yeah, probably it's not so successful like the festival. So we are still here, and it's very nice that you are here too. So Schaffhauser Jazzgespräche is, I think it's very important, and it's important that we talk about things. And the rule is in this forum that every 3 years somebody else is curating this forum. And this we kept until now. We had a few books we made. Now we have this everything online, so there is no more books, but you can see that it's live streamed, and you can see it after on our Facebook, or not Facebook, YouTube channel. So you can hear it. The last Jazzgespräche also there. So you're invited to go there. Now I give the microphone to Anicia Kohler. She is doing this the first time, and she did an amazing job for this very actual theme. And yeah, it's really important for her, and I hope it's going to be important for us too. And she wrote the jazz. It's time for jazz to think about this too. So a big applause for Anicia Kohler, and she will lead you through the night.
So, okay, the language. Who speaks English? Who will be? Okay. So we can do parts of it in English. I think that's no problem. There will be one presentation, I think, that would work better in German. What do you think? That's great. That's great. We're also flexible. Yeah. So okay, when Urs asked me if I wanted to do the Jazzgespräche for the next 3 years, I thought, wow, that's just so great, because I'm a musician and I'm a writer too. So I do both things. I'm always very interested to find out new things, and I'm always researching. And I thought I should really choose something hairy, something really hairy that I can really sink my teeth into, something difficult maybe for me, because I'm not a climate activist. I know that the subject's it's very important. We all have to think about it, especially here in Switzerland. And I thought, I'll choose this. I don't know a lot about it, and I'll just see which musicians I can find and artists that I can find who can tell me more about these things. What I did is I tried to talk to a lot of people, which you can see in the small exhibition over there. For example, I talked to an artist in Egypt, and she told me people here are already affected by climate change. And I talked to an artist in Tanzania who told me about his history that he has in growing up in the slums, and how over there climate change is a communication problem. And he's doing the work, he's trying to do the work as an artist to communicate information about climate change. And I also talked to a Swiss scientist from the WSL-Institut für Schnee- und Lawinenforschung. He was in the media a lot because we didn't have a lot of snow this year, so that was very interesting too. Maybe I'll come back to that. My question was basically, what does this mean really? What does it mean for us musicians? People who are writing music, who are playing, performing music, what does it mean, climate change? Does it have something to do with our work, the things we do? And I tried to put together a few things. I thought we have the things that you can do as a person. You can donate money. You can use your platform if you have it. I mean, us as jazz musicians, we're not Harry Styles. I don't know if we can really influence people, but who knows? You can go to demonstrations, and you can talk about climate change. And then you have the structural side of things, which means where are your concerts? Who do you play with? Do you seek out partnerships with people from the global south, for example? How do you decide, how do you program festivals, etc., etc.? And also, of course, the thing that has been talked about quite a lot, I think, the green touring thing. How can we all reduce our footprint? But today, I'm mostly interested in the artistic side of things, the musical side of things. And at first, I thought, you know, as a musician, what can you do? You can call a piece, I mean, you can say your piece is about a dying breed of animals. Or you can say, you can call your piece, humans are bad for the environment, etc. But I don't think that's the only way to go. You don't have to do a doomsday kind of music. That would be very boring very quickly. And I found out there's so much stuff that you can do. You can decide to do music, to write music, to give hope. Or you can give voice to people. You can transfer informations in a new way. Or you can record sounds that are disappearing, maybe birds that are disappearing, or glaciers that we will talk about today. Or work with people again from the global south, and you can work with scientific data. And as I was researching, all of a sudden I found out that visual artists are already doing that. They are working with scientific data. And I think not a lot of musicians are doing that, maybe because we're scared. I think that will be a way to go, to work with scientific data. And since there is, the English and the standing in front of people. Yeah, there's the university in Luzern, and they have, you can go study there how you would put scientific data into, how you would visualize or sonify scientific data. And I'm so glad to have somebody here who can tell us all about that. Her name is Isabel Benz, who has done a lot of very interesting, amazing things. She has studied architecture at the ETH. Then she studied filmmaking at NYU, New York University. And today she's the leader of this new study, the bachelor Studiengang Data, Design and Art. So without any further ado, I'll just give you the stage.
Thank you, Anicia.
Audio noch?
Thank you very much, Anicia, for the introduction. Welcome to everybody. I'm very, very glad to be here. It's a big pleasure. I'm a little bit coming from the other side, visualization, but tonight or this afternoon we will try to combine everything. So I would like to start just with this. So if anybody has an idea what you hear, please just say it. The first thought that you have, it doesn't have to be correct. Birds. Other ideas? Whales. I would like to do a kind of an experiment with you. So please, all of you, think about what it could be. And the first thought you have, you just say it. So having 10, 15 voices, there's so many people, that's great. So what is your first idea you have? Doesn't matter if it's correct or wrong. Grillen, bird. Go further, I didn't hear the correct one. Thank you very much. This was a small sound performance we just did. I didn't hear the word. Does somebody still have another idea? No, these are bats. Bats at night in the city of Luzern. So, I hear myself. Okay. Bats at night in the city of Luzern. And before I'm talking about the bats, I think this is what we try to do. What we did here is a kind of visualization or sonification. I heard a lot of words. I hoped somebody would come with bat, and then I would hear more and more bats because you get convinced what it is. So we will do the experiment another time, but this is actually what I'm trying to say is data. What we just did is producing data, right? We gave words to something we thought about. So data is everywhere. Data is nothing. It's just a term. It's a term that we give value to, or we parameterize it, and we do something. We try to create a picture, an image of us, of the society, of the environment, of what is around us. And so I brought the map of Luzern, where we can see all these different habitats. So it was a project of diversity and of dying of different kinds, right? Also Artensterben. Bats that are suffering by light pollution, by construction, by the environment that is changing. And we sometimes forget what we live with around us. So we wouldn't hear bats because we don't know how they sound, right? I'm sure now we will hear the bats at night. We know how they sound. So we know the data in this kind of word. And we can start to visualize these bats. Here we have visualization, but we can also sonify it. Maybe it makes more sense to sonify it because we hear them. We don't really see them at night. So data is nothing else, and it doesn't work anymore. Yeah, so I have to do it like this. So data are just points, data points, dots, that we can give meaning, or we can or they have a meaning that we then try to make sense of it. We try to recognize some patterns. We try to understand their values and to think in patterns, or if we think about the future in models. They don't tell us the truth. They just tell us a possibility. And we try to arrange them maybe in a coordination system, or in a Notensystem. Now I'm really missing the words in English. I'm not often talking to music. We try to parameterize them. We give them different values, loud and quiet, high and thank you, and all the other terms, and we make music out of it, or sound, or we make sound design. And I think we do this very much also in Luzern. We don't just visualize what we know, what we see, we also try to improvise. we don't know what will happen in the future. We have a lot of assumption, but we have to keep our ability to not to predict, but to have an idea where we could go to, where we want to go to. We have to visualize these ideas too. So if, for example, we want to visualize time, of course we can have a time axis from x to y, one line, done. But time is not as simple as this. Time is a very complex phenomenon. I don't feel the same instant of time as you do. And right now I'm talking here for 20 minutes and I know time is running very fast, and maybe for somebody it's running very boring because sometimes I'm telling a little bit nonsense. But at the end we are all human and try to understand and make sense of what we know and try to imagine, hopefully, a better future. So the Bachelor Data Design and Art at Luzern is a very, very new program that we just started 3 years ago. We will have the first bachelors that will apply this summer. And what we actually do is talking a lot together. So it's not that we are always in front of our computers, but we really try to understand, to use also science, of course, to talk also to scientists, to understand what's happening and how we can make sense of it. So we would like to visualize for the public on the one hand, and on the other hand, we would like to visualize for the scientificians to try to understand the data and make it visual. And then we also just want to understand how we can frame the right questions. And I brought you an example how we work from this very spring. We just had the final presentations. And I will show you a lot of projects now, a lot of visualizations. I won't go very deep into them, but what I would like to show you that as our students try themselves now to start to think, how can I express what I want to tell, what I want to say? How can I express this and what do I need for? And of course we do the visualizations, graphical, in codes, in animations, in what else, but a lot of students, they start also to use sound. They're complete amateurs, so everything you will hear here is complete invented and with no background of music or sound design. But that's not what I want to show. What I want to show is that the need to collaborate with you is very important. Because if we want to show a world that is getting more and more complex, and that technology now can understand this complexity much better than us, that we don't know if in some years we still need very focalized models, right? Because there's technology that understands the complexity, so we need other kinds how to behave and how to deal with this. And there is what I think music can better than visualizing. When we are looking to something, we focus on something. It's always a decision where I look at you, I look at you, I look at you, right? I have to decide where do I put my focus. If I'm listening to music, I hear everything in once. And I read it in a study. You are more experts than me. I can't give you the source. But I think it's true that we probably hear more in a more complex ways than we see, right? So if we want to see or hear an artifact, something that is different, we will probably hear it faster with the same amount of data or of musical fullness than if we do it in a visualization, because we first have to know where do we look, but if we are hearing, we hear it immediately. So it's two different worlds. We do a lot of installations also with our students. So when we, for example, have to decide where do I look to the installation, I want to look to this lamp, I forget that something behind me happens, and this is what music helps us to combine. So this is the goal of this presentation, to show you how we work, how we show also with scientifics, and I see I already talked 15 minutes. and how we would put this in visualization. So that's actually, as we start, with a big mess. We talked, this is also the two experts from the WSL, Anicia mentioned, from the Institute of Wald, Landschaft and Schnee. We had our semester topic of forest, and would give the freeness to the students to pick any topic of forest. This could be ecosystems, this could be the wood industry, this could be the diversity. So they were completely free. But we started to gather together data from the Institute of Wald, Landschaft and Schnee. And we have Christoph Fischer sitting in us with the blue shirt, and Arthur Gessler, he was here digitally. We had our models and first thoughts, and this was just a brainstorm workshop, what we actually want to do. And then the students were completely free. They could work digitally, they could work in analog terms, they could work graphically or in code. And we started the whole semester with a promenade through the forest, where we actually first wanted to just feel the forest, right? To hear the forest and to see the forest. And then we would go in again with digital devices. So we would measure data first by our eyes and our ears, and then we would need sensors to gather even more data of the forest and transform it in digital terms. So we tried literally to bring the forest back into it in the atelier. And we have at Luzern, we have a lot of workshops in wood and ceramics and metal, but also digitally. So we would go with the students there, and they would just start to build with their hands different models. Digitally, analog, they would 3D print it or model it in a 3D program, and then we'd build it by hand and try a lot of things. And what comes out then, and I brought this because it reminds me a lot in sound, are models. This is, for example, a model of on the left side how a tree is growing, right, by year. It's the tree rings, and separated in months. And the students tried a lot of different kinds how to visualize. They also sonified it to show this Wachstum, growth of trees. And on the left side, that's a complete different approach to wood. There the students build a whole ball card to show how wood in future could be used in much more ecological ways by showing different scenarios. I won't go now into detail. I really want to give you an overview. If you have questions, come to me later. I just want to show you a little bit how we work. And what they did here in a very analog way, they then also brought back again in new terms of new kinds of visualization and technology. So they would, on the left side, we have, for example, a wooden model showing how forest can absorb CO2. So all bubbles represent a specific amount of CO2 that can be absorbed by the forest. And then they would need show different scenarios, how the scenarios change, and they would bring it also into this virtual context where you, as the user, as the interactor, then have to absorb CO2 bubbles. And this should show you how much it is. Our forests never will be able to absorb everything. It's showing quantities and making comparisons about what we talk. It's trying to make numbers visible or tangible, right? So from what are we talking? I just go through. So they tried to bring the forest back, to make interactive installations where you could walk through. what that would show, how trees are communicating. And then also this one here, for example, shows how pills, mushrooms are connected to plants, and how through this connection or symbiosis also of mushrooms and plants, a communication can be activated. So when I look at this, I again see, for me it's a sound installation or sound sculpture, right? So I see a lot of notes, I see a lot of sound that is communicating together and bringing this information together. And another student tried the same thing based on a study from a Japanese forest, where also different mycorrhizas, also mushroom constellations, communicate with the trees through different connections, and she would then, in a very sensitive way, make this also tangible in an interactive installation, where you can choose about different mushroom kinds and plants and see how they and in which ways they communicate together. Also there, if I see this, I hear a lot of sound. Or then even going into a tree. So the question or the need of embodiment is here focused on what would happen if you are a tree, if you go a tree, if you feel like a tree. And what this student's team wanted to show is the stress a tree feels by defoliation, or when he doesn't get enough water, right? And what stress would he have? And the tree shows stress by different VOCs, by different kinds of aspiring or transpiring hearts. Yeah, that's this. Does somebody know what hearts is in English? But when a tree is bleeding, right, it's this yellow bleed. And he shows this in also a data sonification he tried. And I would like to show this. And he also tried just by hand. This is a hand sketch that he then put it into code and animated it just a little bit, one input to the workflow. So very simple ways of how you can visualize. And now we should hear sound. Yes, thank you. So the more that the tree is stressed, the more he produces these particles, and the louder the sound gets. And I'm not sure anymore, but I think he is shuffling time. It's the I think 1 second represents 1 day, but I'm not completely sure anymore, honestly. Or again, growth of trees. This for me looks also already like sonification. It shows 4 different kinds of Fichten on 4 different locations, and how they, accordingly to the environment, will grow faster or slower. So I'm almost at the end already. What I would like to do now, if I have time, I would like to show one final project. This is a project from several years ago, where I was teaching myself at the ZHDK. 2 students for me have been using this immersive lab. It's this 360-degree cinema at the ZHDK. It's actually a sound installation, but you can put visuals on. And so in a module of 6 days, they had time to think about the topic, to research on it, and to find the visuals and bring it into a visual installation. And Laura and Celine, they found data of glaciers, and I'm very happy to have Ramon here, who will then tell you more about glaciers, especially about how glaciers sounds. And they did it visually, and were conferring to the best-known scenarios of the melting of the glaciers. So they tried a lot. How could we visualize glaciers in a 360-degree cinema? Why would we show it there? What is the advantage of showing it in a 3D cinema, and what does this mean? How do we represent it? And they finally decided on a very actually easy visualization. This one is more or less column charts, right? And each column is showing one of the glaciers. So we have the biggest one, the Aletsch Glacier. And the study started at 1990, so they would start just by 100% of 1990 and have a complete white room. Then they went to this 360-degree cinema, tried a lot again of visuals, what would work best, decided then anyway to use this column chart. And what they also did, they introduced the temperature line of the critical temperature, that is about 4.6 degrees Celsius, I think. You correct me, it's somewhere there, where you have the melting pot. And of course, if the annual temperature is above this 4.6 degrees, the glaciers would melt faster. We wouldn't believe that this is actually I have blackouts. Was ist Durchschnitt? Thank you. I have the easiest word. So the average of the Swiss temperature was not long time ago at this 4.5 degrees, right? We wouldn't believe that if we count all nights and also the winter visit, we are actually at this level. And of course, now we understand why 1 degree is so much, right? Because it's a bit different if you're at 4.5 than 5.5, because it's just after the melting pot. So if we are just having 2 degrees more in temperature, this means a lot for our glacier, and that's why they're melting now completely. And so that's what they tried to show, and we will see that the line gets red when we are above this critical temperature average, and before it's blue. And so now we just have to think that we have Ramon's sound design with what I will show now. Yeah, this is students who tried, and you will see a stripe, but it's actually 360 degree going around you. So this is what happens, and now I need sound again. Yeah, and what just happened here, and even more happened in space, is nothing we don't know. We all know it. I shouldn't laugh, but we all know it, right? But what happened in that space is actually we started in the very blank room, and we looked into each other's eyes. We talked together, we chatted together, and then we ended up in the complete dark room. And of course, our eyes first didn't see anything, and only slowly the eyes adapt, and you start to look in each eyes again and talk in this very moment where you had this emotional understanding or embodied understanding of what is actually happening. And I think this is one part of what we are trying very much to do. So to help us to understand as humans, not only as a simple bar chart, but with the whole body and mainly together in one room, and then to start the discussions. And again, Anicia, thank you very much that I could be here. I think it's great, and I'm looking really forward now also to hear Raphael and Ramon, who will actually go deeper into some projects I showed a little bit by students. It's other projects, it's their projects, but I think it will make a very good fit to understand why sound is so important for us. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Do you want to take a question?
Ah. Ja.
Sind diese Projekte, die Sie jetzt vorgestellt haben, auch irgendwo öffentlich? Kann man das nachsehen, nachhören? Also sind diese Projekte öffentlich?
Nein, sie sind noch nicht offen. Also die meisten Projekte, die ich jetzt gezeigt habe, die Waldprojekte, sind jetzt gerade entstanden. Also wir hatten gerade die Schlusspräsentationen dazu. Das Gletscherprojekt haben wir nie veröffentlicht, habe ich aber immer noch im Hinterkopf. Dann brauchen wir ein gutes Sounddesign. Und die Studentinnen, sie sind keine Studentinnen mehr, die das bearbeitet haben, aber das würde man dann zusammentun, das ist klar. Und, aber wir haben verschiedene Ideen im Kopf für Ausstellungen, wo wir das zeigen möchten. Ja. Mhm.
Gibt es eine weitere Frage? Man kann auch später noch fragen, alle, die da sprechen. Everybody is going to be up on the stage later, so you can ruminate it a bit. Okay, so thank you very much, Isabel.
Sure.
And now I'm very glad to have a project with me on stage. Simon Petermann is going to talk about his project called Waking the Giants. He's a trombone player and a sound artist, and he's going to tell us all about it. Do you want to come up now?
Thank you very much.
So, Simon, this is quite nice, kind of a talk show situation.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me about the project. What was it that we saw and where did it take place?
So the video we just saw was impressions from the opening of Waking the Giants in Cairo, and it happened, the premiere was on the 1st of November 2022. And I did this project together with my Egyptian partner, Aya Tarek, and she is a visual artist, and I'm a musician, and we did this together. So the story goes, in 2019, we played the Cairo Jazz Festival with the Fisherman's Orchestra, and then we also visited Alexandria, and we went to a great cultural place there, and then I wanted to return, and thanks to Helvetia, I could spend 5 weeks for a research residency in 2021, and there I met Aya, and we started talking about like topics that we're both interested in, and then we had the idea of working with data from climate change. And then I returned back home, and just a few weeks later it was announced that the next climate summit, the COP27, was in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. This was in November 2022. And all of a sudden, first it was like a project idea for the future, and then it became a project with a deadline. And we decided to try to do it, and we started to reach out to partners, especially Pro Helvetia Cairo and the Swiss Embassy in Cairo. And then we started reaching out to the ETH Zurich. They have a department for atmospheric, so I don't know the name exactly, Institut für Atmosphäre,
Yeah.
so etwas. And then we reached out to them, and eventually we teamed up with a team of 6 scientists, and we worked with them for like half a year remotely. And
So if
Yeah.
I can interject,
sure.
if we take a step back, you play the trombone and synths maybe, I play the piano, and then we have this scientific data, and these instruments, it's just something to put into your hands and you play it with your mouth. It's very physical. And then you have this amazing stuff that Isabel just talked to us about, and we see these amazing pictures too. How do you get from playing an instrument to a project like that?
So I have to introduce my sister now. My sister did a master's degree in Statistik at the university in Zurich, and she is working as an engineer in the department for neurology at the Inselspital in Bern. And she did some amazing visualizations, and one thing that was so nice that she actually printed it and hanged it to her wall in her flat. And then I thought, okay, so when we can do this with data and visualize them, it's also possible to make sonification. And yeah, I was looking for...
So you mean just you have the data set, and if she can visualize it, put it into images, why not put it into music?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as my sister can take one data set and then make several different visuals from it, I can also take a data set and then turn it into music. What we did with this project was like a 2-step translation. So the first translation was from the data into a sonification. Then from the sonification and the visualization, we took this as the start of an artistic translation.
And so you had this data, which was you can interpret data, but still it's data, it's numbers. And how did you get from numbers to music?
Yeah, there are many ways. So what we just heard, we should play it way louder because then it's way more sound. We took like all the glaciers we have now, and then we know over time they will vanish. And there are predictions of how they will vanish and in what time what glacier is somehow vanishing. And what I then did is I start with a chord of, so no, first I said, I think eyes, that's like blue and baby blue, and for me this is in the, I defined this is B major 7 sharp 11.
So which is
this
blue?
was the first. This
Obviously.
I don't know if it's obviously, I'm not a synesthesist, but so I just, I had like 7 scenes, and then to every scene I put some colors, and then from the colors I went to scales and chords. So this was, yeah. And then what I did next, I built a chord, like I played it with my trombone and many electronic effects, and this chord was, I think it's 25 notes over a couple of octaves. And like I have like some sub basses, they were like the poles we have, the ice poles, and all the notes in between are or above are all the glaciers. And then over time, it decreases. So it's a huge chord, very loud at the beginning. In Cairo, they gave me a subwoofer that was like this, so you could really feel the bass. And and then over time, it decreases and decreases and decreases. And that's how I put into music how these glaciers are vanishing.
And something that was very interesting to me when we talked about it before was that I asked you, didn't that feel kind of not creative? And you said something amazing. You said, if Johann Sebastian Bach can write music for God, why wouldn't we be able to write music to scientific data or to that would fit the climate crisis? You remember that, right?
I mean, there are people who say who say music stands for itself and music should be about music. There are people who say talking about music is like dancing to architecture. And then when you talk to an architect, he said, yeah, of course, it's possible to dance to architecture. And music can stand for itself, but it can also, there is this term Gebrauchsmusik, and I think if we have music we use to praise God, or that was written in the intention to praise God, we can also write music with the intention of translating scientific data into something that is more emotional, accessible than rows and rows and rows and rows of data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next question. Your partnership with the Egyptian artist Aya Tarek. I spoke to her too, and it was very moving to me. I mentioned her in the beginning. She said, in my hometown, we can feel and see sea levels rising. We can see that construction is different. Roads are built higher, and buildings are built accordingly. But people don't talk about it. They don't talk about climate change. It's really scientific data is for different reasons it's not used in everyday language, and she thinks what she has to do is make this data accessible, just as you told me now. So because people respond to emotions and they respond to sounds and beautiful pictures, and you can have an impact like that. And she said, it's what I have to do. This is what I have to do as an artist, seeing sea levels rising. And how was that for you as a Swiss person? I mean, glaciers are melting, but it just means we can't go ski anymore.
I mean, eventually and simplified, the water that is melting here will flood Alexandria. And so we took this idea as a direct link. What is linking us in this global crisis? And I mean, the situation is in Alexandria is like this. Alexandria is a city of like 6, 7, 8, 10, they don't know, but I heard several numbers. So a city with some million of people, and this city is just on the shore of the Mediterranean Sea. It does not go into the land, so it's just on the shore. And in Alexandria, the situation now is that if you go to the shore, they have this huge concrete blocks they're actually putting there because what used to be floods that occurred once in a century, they are now happening more often. And what used to be a flood that happened one in a lifetime, they have it now every, I don't know how many years, but they can tell that it's actually accelerating and that they have more floods like this. And you know, it's also like the city of Alexandria is built. So you have the shore and you have these concrete blocks, and then you have like an 8-line street. And when it snows, then this
April?
is in April, or when there is in winter they have rain, and when they have a lot of rain, this street will be flooded, and then they tell people, maybe you should stay at home. We have to solve this for 2 days, and this always.
So how was that for you as a Swiss person to
Okay,
work with somebody who's affected immediately, right now? When for us it's going to be a few years, maybe. Did you feel?
I mean, it's also happening here. So in Ticino now, they are not sure if they can open the swimming pools in summer. But for me as a Swiss, you mean the being privileged in Europe against the global South. Yeah, you know, there are many things that come to my mind. I cannot like put it very much on this climate crisis. It has so many layers. So what was actually the most striking privilege I had maybe was that they had a devaluation of the pound in Egypt during the project, and suddenly the fee we had for this project was not the same anymore. Yeah, the thing is, maybe I can put it that way. During this project, I had the thought, okay, why is it actually important to fight climate change? Because planet Earth will survive. And maybe it's even good for flora and fauna. We don't know.
They can manage without
but
us.
the thing is, it affects humankind, and it affects those the most who are the poorest and who live in these areas that are affected strongly. And that's like in deserts or close to the sea. Yeah, and here in Switzerland, we're very much privileged because we have like possibilities how to find new solutions for that. And in other places, like the weakest of humankind, they do not have the possibility to do anything, and they will be affected the most of this change.
So we have so much to unpack here. It's crazy, all these things swirling around. But I'll just say for now, let's put it on the back burner and keep it in our mind and maybe discuss about it some more later. So thank you very much, Simon, for presenting the project.
Anicia.
See you later.
Thank you.
Du kannst es. And now the glaciers again. Ramon, would you come up, please? Ramon Landolt is a musician and a sound artist as well, a sound researcher. He, for example, he plays in the trio Heinz Herbert. I don't know if you've heard about
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So you did a glacier project, and I think let's just see what it was and then talk about it.
Okay, so we'll watch the thing. Okay.
Okay, so Ramon, what
Yeah.
did we see? What did we hear just now?
Well, I'm still getting almost a cold again when I see these incredibly cold places. Well, where to drop in? Maybe I'll just, because everybody still has in mind the picture with Violeta Garcia playing the cello with the headphone on. So basically, she was performing a composition of mine, which the only indication was hydrophones into the glacier lake, headphones on, listen to it, and interact dialogue to the sounds. And I, as a composer, have then recorded the outcome of this. So that's maybe just a very hands-on example of what the project can be about here.
And basically, at one point, you decided you're not a mountaineer, right? You're not a glacier goer regularly.
No,
you just decided now I'm gonna go.
Yeah, actually, well, I must admit, like there is one very profound reason why I did this project. I was kind of sick of being inside all the time in the basement, coding some algorithms and trying to save on my zip drive of my synthesizer. So I decided, okay, I need a project where I'll be outside. And then, but anyway, I was a nature lover forever, so it was not like a forced thing, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And then, doing, I guess it was about 2 years. You made multiple trips to glaciers. For example, the Morteratsch Glacier, Sinal, and Rhone.
Rhone, yeah, and Moiri and Pizzol, but mainly these three glaciers. But maybe, so the project is called I Sound, Music by and for Glaciers. And it's I Sound is about these changes in state of matter, about melting processes at places that we cannot immediately see, or in this case hear. And I think the I Sound tries to establish a sonic conversation, a sonic experience with these unheard, unseen places that still exist in parallel to our urban anthropophonic sounds or noises.
So you just went there and you decided to listen to the sounds that were there in this basically ice desert. There was no one else around, just you and your microphones, your hydrophones. You recorded water and ice and wind, I guess. And then what did you do with these sounds, these field recordings?
Exactly. So, like when one starts a new project, the learning curve, I think, is immediately steep, at least in my case. So the first time I went with my cool microphones, and then I said, okay, this is just water flowing I'm recording. How am I ever going to do a project with this? And then, well, I had to figure out different techniques with contact microphones, hydrophones, how to really get inside the glacier. So you have to imagine, for example, let's say, the Rhone Glacier, and it's blue ice, but there is no sound. It looks like a still. And then when you put a hydrophone into a serac or Gletscherspalte that is filled with water, you put it in, and then it suddenly sounds like a rainforest field recording. And at this moment I really got hooked up with it and realized, okay, we have so many sonic information, and to my experience also emotional information. And I think that was the point where I realized, okay, I really want to create music to display a subjective sonic experience that people could understand glaciers and the whole thematic about the climate crisis and the melting of the glaciers.
And that was one part of the project. And the second one was the concerts for the glaciers. We have seen the freezing musicians playing the saxophone, and
Yeah.
must have been very cold. What do you mean by that? Music for glaciers?
Exactly. So while being there, I felt an kind of immediate urge that I not only want to extract from there, but also that I really wish to bring something there, bring something to the glaciers. And that's where I started to compose for each glacier particular music and also for the musicians. So for example, Violetta Garcia on cello, I wrote a piece for the glacier and her that has been then performed on site. And I think all the musicians that came and the video makers, photographers, assistants really felt like it was a kind of deep experience to acknowledge this and be there, because the expedition is usually 2 days and then we spent up to 12 hours on the glacier to really understand and also learn from this environment. So, and of course try to transform this into a artistic musical process.
And you told me, and during my research I found this theory, and we've talked about it too, that if you have scientific data that you make visible, you try to form a connection. For example, with a tree, with tree rings. And you didn't work with scientific data, but you made field recordings. You wanted to have this connection too, because you think it's important to separate from this idea that nature is different from human beings, right? That nature is dangerous, or you have to protect it. It's more like the idea of having gleichberechtigte
Exactly.
Beziehung.
Yeah. So in this sense, I don't see my field recordings like as nature recordings, because like this separation of, okay, here we have only nature and then here we have the humans. This is, this is also nowadays very critically discussed about colonizing nature, decolonizing nature and all this stuff. I don't want to enter there. I'm not a specialist on it. But I think that was a really important case. And I think musically, or maybe I can maybe also talk from the standpoint as a musician, as a composer. I think the big question to me was, what can music in the 2020s, or what role should music play in our society? And I'm convinced that a topic like the climate crisis, we are, as humans, I feel we are not able to solve this only with kind of a approach that says you can't do this, you're not allowed to that, you can't anymore this, you shouldn't drink this anymore. So I think the role of the music could be to create a positive narrative to this thematic, bringing the glacier to the city, creating music, bringing the sounds to the people, creating a experience that is experienceable with all the senses and not just on an intellectual base.
Yeah. And just one last question. Did you encounter any criticism for the project?
Luckily not really. There were people also at other talks, at other festivals where there were talks about music and climate, and people say, but don't mix this with music. You should deal with this privately, or the government, or the oil companies. But obviously there was definitely more support. So I've also had the pleasure to present the first part thanks to the Carte Blanche residency at Moods, where we had an audiovisual performance and a sound installation of the Schiffbauplatz we did together with Rotative Studio, the architecture office. And there I felt the public space is a good place to bring the topic to the people. So where people could 24 hours during 1 month enter the sound installation and listen to the compositions.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I feel like in the arts and in the visual arts, they're more open to this thematic. So when I contacted some magazines and journalists, it's like, yeah, but where is the album code? So where's the album to the music? And then there's no album. It's a sound installation. It's an audiovisual performance. And I think festivals and clubs and the music scene really should embrace these different formats. And that's why so great that you guys are doing this here. Yeah.
As are you. Okay, thank you so much, Ramon. We'll see you later back on stage.
Thanks.
I'm so glad what comes next, because we have amazing students talking about and presenting their projects, their bachelor projects, interdisciplinary projects, master projects. You'll see. So all of you, you can come up. We actually rehearsed this before. We did like a chair choreography. I think it works amazing. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
At first, as before, we'll see their work and we'll hear it.
Nothing wrong, peaceful down here. Nothing wrong, blinded. Nothing wrong, blinded by lights. Worries have to change everything.
So I'll just go one after the other and ask you a few questions. At first we had Raphael. And we heard a few sounds. We heard birds and we heard synths, I think. Some kind of, you did something with that. What was it that we heard?
Those sounds that you heard were all actually field recordings from the forest, which I then transformed using digital sound processing, different processes. I won't get into detail. And so it was all field recordings, no synths actually.
Okay.
And the piece is called Silva, Latin for forest. And it's a piece that I'm working on as part of so I'm studying in Basel. I'm actually a saxophone player, and this is very new for me. And in our master program, we do this thing which is called an interdisciplinary project. It's basically our master thesis. And for this, what I wanted to do is write or compose digitally a suite of where I engage with the issues of climate change, biodiversity loss in Switzerland. Yes, in a sound way. And this was the first piece.
So this was a project that you have to do, right? It's something you have to...
We have to do something.
Yeah.
But I chose to do this.
Yeah. But if I understood it correctly, you have to do, in the project, you can't just say, I'll record my saxophone, but you have to do something with another discipline.
I mean, I think this was sort of a misunderstanding on my side, because I thought interdisciplinary means like going really interdisciplinary, but I think what it means, so there are 3 tracks in the performance, composition, or producing master in Basel, those 3. I just said, and interdisciplinary means that you use at least 2 of these categories. But I understood it as going, really like
way
interdisciplinary, way interdisciplinary. So I ended up doing what I'm doing.
And are you happy?
I'm very happy about this. No, it's something that I actually wanted to do for a long time. Yes.
Why did you want to do it for a long time?
I guess because the issue of our anthropogenic climate change and the changes that are happening in the world really speak to me, and there's sort of this huge disconnect between what's happening, what's at stake, and what's being done. And I guess it's just my way of dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you. And Atina, you actually you made this glacier project, right? It was a performance. It was about half an hour, 40 minutes. It was your bachelor project, a piece that you developed with your band together. And when I asked you why you wanted to do something about glaciers, you said something very interesting. You said, my boyfriend, he's a farmer. He's doing something really useful. When he works, we have food. And that you were asking yourself the question, what is it really that I can do for society as a musician? Did your answer change in the meantime?
No, I think it didn't change. And also, while listening to the other presentation now, I thought, well, it's interesting because my boyfriend is a farmer. He's also an organic farmer, so he really tries to make this as less dangerous for nature as possible. And I'm very much in touch with people actually being scared of the future and how this will go on and how we will be able to have food actually in the future, because it's so difficult already now and solutions have to be taken very fast because every year is so different from the next. And so, yeah, that moves me a lot because then I'm like, okay, now I have a privilege, I can be on stage. So why don't I just say something when I'm there and when I have this privilege? So, yeah.
And you told me that you wanted to do something about glaciers because they're so beautiful, and we all have this emotional connection. But then, actually, as you started researching, you went further into the subject, and you came out at completely different with other subjects that are related to that. You said it's not about glaciers. It's just one thing. It's about climate crisis. It's about inequality, etc. Racism.
Yes, I think we have a lot of topics coming up if we start at one topic. And I think that's what we were researching with the band, going like, okay, how do we transmit this, that we are being worried, how we treat the situation. And then we found out that maybe we were worried about how Switzerland is also dealing with the situation, being very, like, keeping the face of like, we're doing things, yeah, look at us, we're recycling our PET flaschen, we're amazing. And I think we even went more with like a bit ironically criticizing also our behavior here in Switzerland, being so privileged, and really kind of like auf unsere Schulter klopfen of like, yeah, we're already doing so well, so why not? Why change? I think it went more into this direction the more we worked on the project. Yep.
And then we have tea. You decided to do something about an oil catastrophe. Why oil?
I think, to me personally, just the visual associated with oil catastrophes was very, very interesting. Because when there's an oil spill in the ocean, you have this like abalone rainbow effect, and it looks really beautiful, but it's actually so horrible. And then there's also this visual of what they call in situ burning, where they burn the oil spill while it's still in the ocean, and that also, like, this visual of a burning ocean, it's so strong. And I think I'm a very visual person whenever I work with music or with any kind of art, so this kind of was the seed that everything else came from.
Which I thought was just an amazing thought. You actually chose something beautiful. It was beautiful in a catastrophic way, but it spoke to you as a musician because it was beautiful. So that was very interesting. And you decided to focus on Deepwater Horizon. Why was that?
Well, I knew actually that I wanted to work with an oil catastrophe, and I just started kind of researching what has happened maybe over the last 50 years. And Deepwater Horizon was a very interesting event to me because it's actually pretty recent. It was in 2010, and that means that it was very well documented also on the internet, and there's a lot of video material, a lot of scientific articles, a lot of interviews and such that you can just research and access, and that made it really, really nice for me to just really get a feel of what was going on, even though it was so far away in a way, because it happened in the Gulf of Mexico, in the US.
And then we have Alexandre.
Yes.
You decided to work with birds. Why?
So I think the first thing was like the visual beauty of this movement, these shapes that the birds create together. And I remember like seeing this kind of migration and being amazed by it. And then it was just a thought about the relation between how these birds can behave as a group together and improvise these shapes without leadership. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a leader in this group, and I think it's really
an important principle when we improvised. I do a lot of improvisation, and I think hierarchy is kind of something we talk about when we play this kind of music. So there is no hierarchy between the players, there is no leader, and we can go anywhere, and that's what the birds do. So that was like my thought. And then I learned about Bernie Krause, who is an American scientist and bioacoustician who lives in US and records since 50 more years forests all around the world. And he documented the human impact on sound diversity. So something that we don't hear a lot is that we lose a lot of sound diversity because we lose biodiversity. And for example, in Europe, we lost 30% of birds in the last 50 years. So automatically, in forest, we don't hear the same sounds. And so I wanted to write music about that too.
And your the suite has 7 movements. How did that come about? The number 7.
So the number 7, I think, has no importance, but it's more about the rules that the birds follow to create these shapes. So they have like scientific studies in the 80s about how the birds behave together, and they isolated different principles that they follow. So for example, the first 3 movements are the first 3 basic rules. Is the rule of separation, is that they don't want to overcrowd one point in space. You have the role of cohesion, so if there is a void, then they will tend to fill it. And there is the rule of alignment. So if a majority of birds go in one direction, then there is a chance that the other will go in this direction. And there are 7 rules that I used as tools in the compositional process to write for acoustic instrument and musicians that also improvise within these rules.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now at this point, I would like to let you discuss amongst yourselves. While we build our podium here, everybody's going to come up on stage. I would just love to ask you to discuss together in groups of 2 or 3. What did you just hear? Do you have any questions? Do you feel angry or inspired or anything? Just for a few minutes, and then we can answer all these questions together. Maybe not all of them. So Isabel, Ramon, and Simon, you can come back on stage. And by the way, please enjoy this amazing, it's like taking notes, but in a beautiful way. That's Matthias illustrating right now.